If you want to buy a car in Australia, you need to understand some basic paperwork, or otherwise you might get in trouble and have to pay thousands of dollars. I'm Arnie and I've been traveling Australia for more than 4 years, and I've worked in agriculture, hospitality, construction and mining. And in this video, I'll explain you the basic things that you need to understand if you want to buy a car in Australia, so you do not make the same mistakes than some of my friends and myself did that costed us thousands of dollars. So the first thing that you need to understand is the differences between the REGO and the Roadworthy Certificate, also known as RWC. So the REGO, or Certificate of Registration, is a certificate that your vehicle needs to have in order to be legally allowed to drive on Australian roads. Every state has their own Department of Transportation, and they are the ones responsible for the REGO in each of their states. But usually you can renew it every 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. The typical cost is $250 every 3 months. So 6 months is $500 and then 12 months is $1,000. That is a typical cost for a REGO in all states in Australia. So that is an extra cost that you have just by having a car in Australia. The REGO is something that is attached to the vehicle. So even if you buy a car that has a REGO, the REGO comes with a car and you keep it. But if the car has no REGO, then to register, you need a customer reference number that we will see now, the proof of vehicle ownership, which is a paperwork that shows that you bought the vehicle from someone else. Then you have to do the specific paperwork of every state, and then this is state specific, but it says here vehicle inspection certificate, aka roadworthy certificate. Most states require it, but every state demands it at a different time. For example, in Queensland you need the roadworthy certificate, which is a mechanical check, we will see now as well, at every time that you change ownership. So every time that you buy or sell a car, you will need a RWC to be able to do that transaction. But for example, in Western Australia, WA, you just need to do the RWC the first time that you register the car, but every time that you change the ownership, you do not need to do another roadworthy. And then you also need to get a compulsory third-party insurance. Then the second important document that you need to understand is that roadworthy certificate, RWC, which is a document certifying that a vehicle is safe to drive on Australian public roads. It is typically required when selling, transferring ownership, or re-registering a vehicle. This happens when you want to register your vehicle in another state. So let's say that you have a Queensland REGO, a Queensland plate, and then you move to Northern Territory. So you usually will need to do a roadworthy certificate to do this transaction. As I said before, each Australian state has specific rules and names for the RWC. In New South Wales, for example, is also known as the pink slip, and it is called this way because the paper is pink for this specific legal procedure. It is state by state specific. Most of them, it's pretty much the same. So roadworthy certificate, roadworthy, but you see, in New South Wales it's called safety check, pink slip, Tasmania vehicle inspection report, but it is the same concept. So what they're gonna do when you do a roadworthy certificate, so they're gonna check the essential safety components of a vehicle. So even if you have an old car, you might still be able to pass the roadworthy. Roadworthy means that you're worthy of driving on a road, so you're worthy of driving. So they don't check super modern specific features, it's just the brakes, the tires, the wheel, the steering and suspension, the lights and reflectors. So for example, one time in Queensland, when I had to do my roadworthy certificate, my lights were a bit foggy, were a bit yellow on the top of the lights in front of the car. So I had to clear them up. The lights of my car were a bit yellow and foggy. So in Supercheap, you can buy this headlight restoration kit with all the tools to scratch the front, and then it makes it clear again. So that is one of the requirements for the roadworthy. Then the windscreens, if they are a little bit cracked, they also require you to put new ones. The seat belts, they check that they retract and they work properly. The exhaust and emissions, and then overall structural integrity, so there is no rust in the chassis and there is no broken parts under the car that would literally make the car collapse at some point. So it is a basic safety certificate, but with the type of cars that we usually buy as backpackers, we tend to fail 1 or 2 times until the car is properly fixed for all these little things. What also happens is that some mechanics know that backpacker cars are really old, so they kind of scam us and find us a lot of little things to charge us like $500 or $1,000 in repairs, because they just know that we don't know the rules, we don't know exactly what's going on. So there is some dodgy mechanics, so just be aware of that. And then the last thing that we need to know is the customer reference number, or CRN, which is your specific ID number that you have with the Department of Transportation. So the first time that you start to do a specific procedure with the Department of Transportation of any state, they will give you a customer reference number. It's your ID, literally, your ID number for the DOT, Department of Transportation. And to do it, you just need to present valid ID, usually passport or driving license as well. Just if you do the process of transferring the driving license from your country to Australia, in this point, they already give you a CRN. And it is good that you keep all these little different numbers organized in a place, because otherwise it's a mess. So the next time that you want to do something, they will ask you, oh, what's your CRN? So if you have it available to find it quickly in a spreadsheet or a Notion, which I use, for example, then it's much better because you can speed things up, and then the workers there are a bit more happy to help you. You need to know that it is free and you got it done really quickly when you do one of these different procedures. And then the last thing that it's extremely important for you to know is the PPSR, which is a Personal Property Securities Register. So what is this? So this is a check that you can do for $2 in an official website from the government that will search the car that you want to buy and have a look if it has had any major accidents or if the vehicle is still under a loan. And this is what I told you at the beginning of the video, that you could save thousands of dollars in mistakes. So I have a friend that bought a really amazing car, a Land Cruiser from an Australian, but what he didn't know is that the car still had a loan of more than $30,000. And the thing is that the other guy didn't tell my friend. So he found himself with this amazing car, but that he still had to pay $30,000 to the bank. So this was obviously a scam, because the other guy didn't tell him that this loan was still under the car. But my friend could have avoided everything for just $2 doing this check, because this check tells you, it checks the car, the number plate, the VIN, which is a number that every chassis of the car has. It's the ID, the official ID number of the car. So it checks everything and it tells you if something wrong or fishy is happening with that car. So really recommend to do it. I didn't do it with the first car that I bought, and I was lucky. But then every while and then you hear some crazy stories about, especially about loans. This will only happen with new cars, like 2015, 2020, like newer cars that people buy. So between backpackers, it is very rare that happens, but still it's good to check to see if the car has been in a major accident, because the integrity and the car might be affected. As I was saying, it checks if it has outstanding loans, the accident history, and also if it has clear ownership. So it means that the car has not been stolen. So you just press here and go to this official page, and you just do a $2 search, and it will bring you to this page. You press continue, and as I was telling you, you have to put the VIN number. So it's actually the ID number of the car, the chassis number. Then you pay, you put your email, you pay, and they will send you the state with the car. It is super quick, just $2. Guys, I used to be really cheap. I was like, oh, why should I pay $2 for this? No, just pay it. Like, you might save literally thousands of dollars if they try to scam you or it's been in a major accident. So it is worth it every time. And here I want to show you an example of a backpacker post that I saw in a Facebook group. And this is the exact situation that my friend found himself into. So it is more usual than you think. It is some kind of scam. So I guess it can be solved legally, but you don't want to involve in all this extra hassle and paperwork and everything if you could just avoid it. So now you know all the basics for buying a car in Australia, and also how to avoid getting scammed and have to pay tens of thousands of dollars when buying a car in Australia. But buying a car is just step one. What you need to do next is get a job to be able to fund your stay and travel in Australia. So watch this video next, where I explain the secret certification that 99% of new travelers in Australia do not know, and will help you get a job super easily and quickly.